Please welcome Steve Curtis, our first speaker.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So honored to be here, especially to start the evening out. Can we raise the house lights in a moment? I had a chance to chat with the speakers. You're in for a real treat tonight. This is going to be amazing. And there is this theme that goes through everything. Tonight, I'm going to share my life story with you and various experiences I've had that have given me the opportunity to look at the world in a different way, and particularly illness. This story of my life that I have experienced may be a little bit controversial for some of you, but I'm going to kind of walk you through and take you through the story. First, I want to start with a little bit about my life today. ZAG Group, we find plants from around the world that indigenous populations use to help with stress and pain and sleep and depression. We do have a few people here. ZAG people in the house? I didn't pay them to be here, but they do believe in what we do because it really is changing the world. We help people find peace through plants. And in a lot of ways, they make people's life better without the side effects of other things they may consume. I live an incredibly privileged life today. I have the opportunity to travel around the world and meet and speak with interesting people who really are thought leaders and have an exhilarating joy I call epic joy. It wasn't always that way. I started out as a child, high IQ, ADHD. I got expelled from elementary school in grade 6. Quite the achievement to start your career with, I think. And I spent a lot of time alone as a child with a mom that worked a lot and an only child and not being able to play with friends. I had a loneliness that drove me forward. And it created a fire for success that propelled me to financial success early, but it didn't satisfy me because I had a loneliness and an inability to receive love in my life, a hungry ghost, we might say. And this hungry ghost could not be fed. I had massive anxiety and depression, and this started to manifest into health issues. I would consume alcohol, copious amounts of alcohol, to reduce that stress. And when I couldn't sleep, I would use sleeping pills. The colds lasted longer, the headaches came on. The illnesses I had eventually emerged into these little spots. It started here on my chest and then moved here and here and here. And after a bunch of doctor's appointments, we figured out that these spots were something called a peripheral T-cell lymphoma. Brace yourself, it gets ugly here. If you're scared of blood, don't look. These spots were a diagnosis that was almost terminal for everyone. I actually couldn't find a survivor anywhere in the world after 3 years. And I would basically rot away was my prognosis. And I hoped they were wrong. So I went to Harvard and Yale and Stanford to try and get a different diagnosis. But everybody agreed I was with this crazy cancer. And there was no treatment options. At 24, it left me in a pretty dark place. But I was an entrepreneur, and what do entrepreneurs do but dream? So I set an ambitious goal to summit Everest 5 years out and to somehow find a cure for my cancer. What was most miraculous is somehow a path just showed up. I started meeting people that were survivors, that somehow had defied all the odds without treatment. I met doctors and healers, everything from Reiki to psychoneuroimmunology, which is this really interesting part of medicine that studies how the mind relates to the body. It doesn't make people any money, so it doesn't get a lot of attention. But there is a place within us where when we find peace, we can interface with the autonomic nervous system that modulates the experience of the immune system. And I became very interested in finding this. And I had this TSN turning point, as we call it, where I looked at my own blood under a microscope. This is called dark field microscopy. This is an immune cell. And as I saw it, I asked the question, is this cell alive? Is it conscious? And I compared it to an insect or a pet, or actually any of us if we were looking at this audience from 200 feet above. And I started to see it as a conscious entity. My body, instead of just a body, as a community of 100 trillion cells that all had an opinion, that had life, that had purpose. And I asked myself, if this were a country, what would my leadership be like? And so I looked at this illness as a revolution, and I decided to apply my learning from business, where as a company, once upon a time, we were miserable with a bunch of unhappy, unhealthy people. When I brought something to it and I changed, our organization started to flourish. And there was really one defining principle that emerged from that experience with the organization. It was love. And so these cells that were killing me, that were taking over my body, that were burning the White House down, I decided to love them, to listen to them, to embrace their message. And what I found was something very extraordinary. They stopped. They stopped progressing. They stopped attacking. They started going away as I heard their message. And 5 years after my diagnosis, I summited Everest as a joyful, energetic person with one little spot on my ass. I called it my ass kicker to keep me honest. And when I came down, they were all gone. No treatment, terminal cancer disappeared. We're 9 years later. I've written a book about the story. It's a little bit complex. If anybody wants to help me review it and kind of go through and give me some feedback and tell me if you think I got it, I would love your help. Our URL's at the end. But this process that I've created, I'm very intent in bringing this to the world to help us, the people here, the loved ones that we share in our life who may struggle with illness of any kind. We've assembled a group of people under what we call the Perception Medicine Foundation. Some of these faces you may recognize, leading clinicians, researchers, healers, to ask the question, how does spontaneous remission happen? And to bring a method together where we take terminally ill people through a process and try to attempt to achieve what I achieved. This is what we're working on. And we just started filming this week. We started our strategy. And so this revolution is a revolution in a medical system that disempowers us, that sees us as economic centralization machines. And I see something different. I see our power through healing, through love, through peace and joy. And I want to invite you to come join me in this revolution.